I would emphasize three, which I found particularly interesting, which is trying to discourage demand for irregular migrants. Because if there's a lot of demand, there will be more irregular migrants. Another very important recommendation that has been made is mainstreaming migration into development planning. So many governments, many countries are working on development plans as to how they can raise the gains for their populations, and they now start actually including migration and diaspora involvement in their development planning. Then as a third outcome, I think it has again been stressed that we lack global data, comparable data.
When we look and see, from the beginning of the Global Forum in 2007 until now, we have an increase of the number of people who are undocumented migrants, so without documents and irregular status. We have an increase, a dramatic increase of migrants in detentions, going through deportation process. That keeps going up. So the point I think everybody's feeling is when can we get some real outcomes and real concrete things that we can achieve, coming out of this Global Forum. And I think it's really the opportunity for us here to kind of come up with some concrete proposals, concrete outcomes that we can then take to the government and say, these are our recommendations.
There is a shrinking space for an educated debate on migration in general, let alone migration and development. So that's one of the recommendations that's very important towards these governments, that they should pick up in relation to civil society, but also in relation to the private sector. And as far as I understand, they are willing to play a role in that. And secondly, of course, one of the major themes here is rights of migrants, which are violated in many different ways, and where the union should have a huge responsibility, but they should also be recognized as partners for sending and receiving countries.
What is still missing until now is a feedback mechanism or reporting back mechanism from the governments to civil society. What is actually happening to the recommendations? I mean, many people are frustrated. They've been meeting for years. They come up with very reasonable, very important recommendations. But what happens with it?
Today is the open space, meaning a dialogue between the governments and civil society. Now for a dialogue, it needs two sides to talk. But what we have seen today is more migrant-sending countries raising issues, raising questions, but also raising their demands, and civil society organizations that in one way or another represent migrants' interests talking. What we have not heard today was the voice of the receiving countries, be it the United States and Canada, be it the European Union member states, be it the countries at the Persian or Arabian Gulf, be it Australia or New Zealand. But for a dialogue, you do not only need partners who are willing to listen, you also need partners who are willing to take up the issues that are on the table.
So in a certain sense, the fear of the governments continues to prevail, where after coming for so many years together, 5 years together, they are not ready to tackle hard issues as yet. So in a certain sense, civil society is so much far more advanced than the governments, because the governments are still taking this kind of intergovernmental process and their incremental stages. I think it's an outcome, it's very poor, because given what is happening in the world today with the global economic crisis, what's happening to migrants, people losing jobs and things like that, I think there needs to be a much stronger response of governments.